Thursday morning. It's June 12th, 2025. Lots of people like to know the date and the time. It's running a few minutes behind here, 8:12 a.m. Central, 9:12 a.m. Eastern on this Thursday. Take a picture with your phone of the QR code. Of course, we go live on Twitter, X, Facebook, YouTube, all that good stuff. We are here every day on this channel. We've got 8 shows on this channel. Lots more to come. Brendan Martin, executive producer, works harder than 3 dozen Mennonite farmers to make this happen. So before we get going, let me say too, check out the website, sidelines.live. All of our sponsors' information is on there as well. Let's get started. We got Jacques Doucet, WAFB Channel 9 in Baton Rouge, checking in with us to start off this morning. The absolute pro, the guys everywhere. And I still remember Mike, Jacques, there was a guy named Mike Sirianni, was the top photographer at Channel 3 when I interned at Channel 3 years ago in Memphis, WREG. I see a thing on X last night. He's now the crime reporter for Channel 3. He got carjacked yesterday getting gas.
Oh, no.
Unbelievable. He's okay. But, you know, I think about the local reporters, how much knowledge that you have. And we see on national TV flyover, you know, they know about a lot, but very little about anything. It's not a criticism. It's an observation. You cover LSU, man, like kudzu and cotton, man. You are on top of it. There's so much hype right now about football, but before that, you're making your annual pilgrimage to Omaha. So listen, I mean, when it gets tournament time, when it gets to the NCAA baseball tournament, there's just another gear LSU has. And the box, I know Rod Ditto won 11 national championships at Southern Cal, Augie Garrido, a bunch at Texas, but that's in a different format. It's a lot tougher now. And Omaha, Rocco's is ready for LSU. They're licking their chops.
Yeah, I guess 1986 will be 40 years away. Next year, LSU made their first College World Series appearance, and this will be their 20th trip. So I'm not great at math, but LSU's going to Omaha every other year to the World Series. And so, like you mentioned with Rod Dato and what he did, but in the modern era of college baseball, no one really has been better than LSU. They won their 7th national championship since 1991, 2 summers ago, now going for 8. Had a big send-off yesterday at Elliott Stadium. A bunch of fans came out. Team got on the bus, headed over to the airport, and then flew into Omaha. They walked around Charles Schwab Field, as it's called. And John Eads, who is a young reporter for us, who's done an amazing job covering them all year long, will be there covering the team in Omaha starting today. But yeah, Rocco's is a pizza joint that's across the street, Italian restaurant across the street from the stadium. I talked to the owner 2 years ago. He said he does about 80% of his business for the year in these 2 weeks over in Omaha. And yeah, they'll have this Jell-O shot contest that I believe, you know, Ole Miss was the all-time leader in with 18,000 shots, and then LSU came up 2 years ago and they had 68,000 shots. And it's a good thing. They give money to all the local food banks of the 8 teams that are in the tournament with that money. So yeah, it's going to get going. LSU plays Saturday night. 2 SEC teams going head-to-head, LSU and Arkansas, 6 p.m.
You know, and you think about LSU, this baseball team this year, and they had it's a grind, 10 weekend series. Did you expect this another trip to Omaha? I mean, honestly, the standard at LSU is so high. That's when we talk about culture. So yeah, there's never a surprise, is there?
No, I mean, I've tried to interview a bunch of LSU greats in previous weeks here. We've had Ryan Terrio come by, Mikey Matuk. Yesterday, I visited with Anthony Ronaldo and Micah Gibbs, Ryan Schimpf. Patrick Coogan from back in the 90s came by yesterday, and they all understand the deal. You know, you get defined by what you do in June at LSU. You play 56 regular season games. You have the SEC tournament. But really, the question at the end of the day is, did you go to Omaha or not? And this team is going to Omaha. 2 years ago was an all-time team with the top 2 picks in the draft, and Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz, and a lot of other guys on that squad that were tremendous players. But this team maybe doesn't have quite the sizzling star power of that, but they're shaping up pretty nicely heading into the tournament with 2 great ace pitchers. The hitting came along last weekend against West Virginia. And so, Jay Johnson has been to Omaha 2 times in the last 3 years, and he's a young guy. He's not even 50 years old yet. He could be at LSU a very long time and establish himself as one of the all-time greats.
That's very comforting to LSU's opponents.
Yeah, well, he's got to embrace this new landscape of college athletics between NIL, transfer portal, all that. I mean, the calendar's goofy. The fact that LSU's up in Omaha preparing for their biggest games of the year, and yet the portal is open right now, and they're trying to massage that thing, get players from next year, so they're back in Omaha a year from now.
Yeah. And Chris Lee will be in here in just a second from Southeastern 16, and he is a baseball junkie, to put it mildly, and covers the SEC like we do. And Jacques, you've been to Omaha several times, and Frank Duffy, I don't know if he's ever going to be able to go back after a couple of years ago when he told his wife it was just going to be a quick stop by in Omaha, and he was there for 12 days in the RVs. I mean,
I went 2 years ago, and I flew in on a Wednesday, and then I flew out 2 Wednesdays later. It was a 2-week trip, and they were in the losers bracket, and every night us in the media were in the media room saying, well, we'll check out tomorrow, or we'll extend our stay, one of the two, made it all the way to the finish line. And before you knew it, you were celebrating at Elig Box Stadium in front of 10,000 fans for a celebration, and the 4th of July was a few days later. I mean, it really eats up your summer in a good way, because it is the slowest sports time of the year when LSU's not playing baseball.
Yeah, it is. And I tell you what, when I look at the standard, you think about Florida, they've been, I guess Kevin O'Sullivan's been seven College World Series. LSU, doesn't matter who the coach is, it just keeps going. Obviously you want to win the College World Series, but I just think, I think if you take a look at a chart that shows the interest in the numbers, the TV numbers in Major League Baseball, it mirrors the rise in popularity of college baseball. I think this is, and LSU is a perfect example. What Skip Bertman started was, 5 national championships. The 90s, they're obviously there's never been a decade like that for anybody in baseball. But I think this is going to be fantastic. And you get in that losers bracket, yeah, it's even more stressful than it should be.
Yeah, well, Jay Johnson, as a head coach, has been to the national championship twice. He lost at Arizona. He won at LSU. And he said both times, I haven't won my first 2 games. So it'd be nice to change that this time around and stay out of that losers bracket moving forward. But, yeah, certainly, which, like you said, Skip Bertman came to LSU. He, Skip Bertman talks. He said, talked about going to Omaha. People didn't even know what that was. What are you talking about? And so now it's like religion. They drive up there, and there's purple and gold everywhere you look. Arkansas, to their credit, great fan base as well. I think there'll be tons of Arkansas fans there. Florida, they don't travel. When I've been up there, they got a few people, but it hasn't been a ton. So anyway, like you said, Skip Bertman made people care about college baseball in the South, and now you look at what it is. It's pretty spectacular.
Yeah, Chris Lee, this Jacques Doucet, WAFB Channel 9 in Baton Rouge. Lucky guy, gets to cover LSU sports, which never a dull moment. But Chris, welcome aboard. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, good morning.
We're, Chris, I just mentioned about the popularity. Butch Thompson talked about it 3 years ago. I remember him saying there were 48 players on opening day rosters of Major League Baseball teams from SEC schools. This year, you know what that number was? 88.
Yeah. And I'm actually in the middle of writing an article about the College World Series. It's for a fantasy baseball outlet about like who can you watch that might be valuable to you down the road, and the number of players just on Arkansas and LSU, who I'm writing about, who I think are going to see the majors one day. It's absurd.
Yeah. You know, Jacques, you look at the players that LSU has. That team, you said 2 years ago, Chris, before you came on, he thought that's the all-time LSU team, possibly with two of the top picks in the Major League Baseball draft. Paul Skeens. I don't know if he got his pilot's license or not, but he was at Air Force for a while,
Yeah.
and he's the 23 World Series. So, what's the closest team to that at LSU, Jacques?
Well, I mean, you got to let it play out. It's only 2 summers ago, so we'll see how many of those guys make it to the major leagues. Obviously, it's not like the NFL where you go straight in. But 2009 national championship team, I think there was 13 guys on that team that made it to at least AAA ball, and 8 of them, I think, in the majors. You're talking about DJ LeMahieu, Austin Nola, Mikey Matuk made it to the majors. Ryan Schimpf made it to the majors. Jared Mitchell, very good player who's now on the SEC network. I mean, there were a number of guys that, made it that far. So I guess in 5, 6, 10 years, we'll see how many of these 2023, Trey Morgan's knocking on the door and some others. But that 2009 team, pretty stout.
Look, we're in Braves country and Cardinals country. Those are the bookends. In the East, the Braves, the West, the Cardinals. And then down where you are, hell, my friends, Tanner Stein and Quentin Stein, they're all from Lake Charles. They're Astros fans. They almost think they live in Texas. So, one
of the great tragedies of life was how Astroworld and Waterworld closed down. I mean, how does that happen? But in Lafayette, that was the Cajun vacation. For a weekend, you go to Houston, you go to Astroworld, Waterworld, and you catch the Astros play in the old Astrodome. So we don't have a team here, obviously. So we're kind of, and then in the 80s, all you could watch were the Braves and the Cubs. So some people watch them. But, we don't have a team. It's kind of just spread out everywhere. And then I'm from Lafayette, so I remember when Ron Guidry, Louisiana Lightning, who went to the Raging Cajuns, was winning a Cy Young with the Yankees. There were a lot of Yankees caps in Lafayette as well. So,
I remember as a kid, you'd come home from school before practice. You'd have an hour, 30 minutes, and you'd turn on WGN with Harry Carey and Steve Stone. And inevitably, as the game went on, as Harry was more liquored up or beard up, he would say, "Let's give a shout out to the nuns at St. Sophilia's Convent in Springfield, Illinois. Cubs win." And then you had, of course, Ernie Johnson and the Braves. So those are, what Chuck Oliver calls all those Braves fans a couple of years ago, well, back now 4 years ago, when they were celebrating winning the World Series at the Astrodome. He called them he had a name for them, the TBS kids or something like that, because they grew up with that. And there is no better sport to attend in person than baseball, Chris Lee.
Yeah, and by the way, I cannot tell you how many hundreds of hours of homework were missed in the Lee House because of WGN and WTBS.
Yes. Yeah. I might say, Chris, you're looking at LSU and Arkansas, 2 SEC teams coming in. They're going to be forced to play each other from, as they say down in the Deep South, the get-go. What do you think happens? Who's got an advantage and who thinks going to win this whole thing? And then, Chris, after you give that answer, which is not easy, I'd like to hear what Jacques thinks.
Well, I've gone back and forth. LSU was my pick to win the tournament before the tournament started because of the pitching setup with Anderson and Ianson and having a couple other guys in Case and Evans and Zach Cowan. Just the 4 of those guys have just been incredible. Now 5 down, LSU is really talented, but the results come and go depending on what day it is. I mean, Chase Shores hit 102 the other day, and if you can do that, that's hard to hit if you can throw strikes. But we did a pick video for LSU and Arkansas, and I took LSU to win the opener because of Cade Anderson. I'm a little concerned. He and Ianson weren't as good in the supers, but it was also murderously hot, and that might have had something to do with it too. But they've also thrown a lot of innings, and Anderson's thrown more than he's ever thrown before by a lot. So I'm watching that. I took LSU to win one game, but I think because of Arkansas's pitching depth, I've actually got them coming out of the bracket the hard way. Maybe that's rationalizing, picking between two teams. I can make a great case for each winning, but I think Arkansas's pitching depth, 1 to 10 or so. I like LSU's arms 1 to 4 better, but when you get 5 to 10 or so, I like Arkansas's a lot better. So it's just like, how does that manage? Yeah. Can Arkansas knock Cade Anderson or Anthony Einson out early? Like, there's a lot of storylines there with pitching that I'm very interested to see how those play out.
Jacques?
Well, we were talking about it. I don't know if Dave Van Horn is just due to win it. This is just his year to win it. I was joking yesterday. I'm like, you ever think he rolls over at 3 a.m. thinking about the guy who missed that ball, didn't catch it? I mean, I don't know how I would handle that. But, they've got a very strong team. LSU has not hit lefties all that well during the year. Arkansas is throwing this guy. Chris, you're the pro. What's his name? The lefty that's
Zach Root.
Yeah, Root. Going with him. So it's just a matter, does this LSU offense that we saw this past weekend, Stephen Milam, I think only hit 211 in SEC play. He came out and had 8 RBI in the 2 super regional games. Jared Jones, he's your typical slugger, hit and miss. I mean, does he hit? And so I think the lineup is pretty good for LSU, and the crowd too. I mean, Jared Jones said that when he was there 2 years ago and they sing the national anthem and they get to the final line, land of the free, home of the, usually you say brave, all the LSU fans yell, Tigers, and he said he had chills down his spine by all the LSU fans that were there. So, look, they played a series here in Baton Rouge. LSU won 2 out of 3. I don't know if that means anything or not. But, Vegas thinks Arkansas is the favorite and LSU's number 2 in what Vegas believes. And they're going head-to-head first game, which, some people debate, is that a good thing or not? I think the winner of this game really has a great chance of winning the national title because, no offense to the other teams in there, but I felt like 2 years ago, and Chris would know better than me, but 2 years ago, that Wake Forest team was a juggernaut. I mean, they were tremendous. And I don't know if there's another team, that there's a team like that in this field. It doesn't feel like it when Vanderbilt's getting knocked out by Wright State and Murray State's making it. I mean, you got a lot of parity in there.
Yeah. Chris, along that line, the 8 teams that are in here, you got 2. I mean, they're talking about Murray State. Their stadium holds about 800 or 900 people. I mean, that's what it used to be like in the SEC. So, you got to start somewhere. Trees and grass both start at the same place, but trees don't hang around with the grass too long. So, Chris, these 8 teams, how strong is the field along what Jacques just said, in your opinion?
Yeah, look, there was a lot left on the table that just from let's make this the best event it can be that got knocked out. Like Vanderbilt is a one. I thought Vanderbilt had the pitching to maybe win the whole thing, but the bats didn't show up. North Carolina I thought was really, really strong. I thought Auburn was really good, just got matched up with Coastal Carolina. Like there were a lot of good teams that lost out on the way. But I'll tell you this, when I look at it, it's a better bracket than I thought. If you focus on who's left rather than who's gone, like Oregon State, Ava Arquette, Dax Whitney are maybe going to be both top 5 picks in the draft. Now, Whitney's got 2 more years to go. And Arquette's this year, he's one of the best pure hitters in college baseball. You got Rock Chalowski at the shortstop at UCLA, who's also maybe going to be a top 5 or top 10 pick, I guess, next year. You got Coastal Carolina's pitching. They're not as loaded with, like first-round type arms. But, man, they got 10 or 12 guys that could pitch with just about anybody. And Caden Bodine is the best catching prospect in the draft. Terrific on-base guy, terrific defender. Louisville's got Zion Rose, who's probably a first or second rounder next year. Tate Davis, their freshman, who's maybe a first rounder in a couple of years. And Patrick Forbes, who's probably a second rounder this year.
Yeah.
And then you got the Murray State story, which is interesting in its own right. I think it's better than maybe I'd given it credit for being until I sat down and looked at the talent. But a lot of the focus is on who didn't make it, and I get it. That's what we've all been thinking. Yeah. But it's the left side of the bracket, the right side is going to get the focus, because I think Arkansas and LSU are the best two teams in the tournament. But those other teams aren't bad. And, man, it's baseball. Stuff happens. Murray State's here, in case you needed a reminder.
Yeah. Chris, that is a great take. Jacques, I know you've got a busy day, and we were and a lot going on, but love having you on always. And you're not going to Omaha, but one of your reporters will be out there. So, man, I just think this event, I'd love to see what the TV numbers are. Have they surpassed 3 million in any of these games the last few years?
Good question. I have to look it up and see, but Chris is nodding yes.
I think they have. Yeah.
Okay. I thought there was a 3.1 or 3.2 million. Gary Harris, WVUA sports director, Channel 23 in Tuscaloosa, Tide 100.9, Tider Insider TV, talking with Jacques Doucet of Channel 9 in Baton Rouge and Chris Lee of Southeastern 16. Gary, have you seen those numbers? I mean, they're not going to be what the football numbers are. I mean, that would be great if they were, but I think I will be glued to the TV, man. But Jacques, let people know how they can follow you. And thank you so much for, we worked through it. We got the best executive producer on the planet for what happened to his system this morning. And look at this. I can't get better. But anyway, let them know how they can follow you, and let's do it again.
I'm going to go back and watch the replay of this and listen to what Chris says, so I'll be ready for my sportscast tonight. So he's breaking it down very nicely. But, and you're chasing and then your women's basketball numbers too. I mean, they're hitting 10, 11, 12, 13 million in the NCAA tournament. So my name right there, at Jacques Doucet on Twitter, and WAFB.com is our website. And we'll have all the coverage from Omaha. John Eads starts our coverage today.
By the way, I love the set. Your set is unbelievable. A lot of purple and gold back there. Take care. Take care, Jacques. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Gary, the baseball discussion, I think, is fascinating. This is Chris Lee. Really, it covers all the SEC sports.
Hey, good morning.
Probably his favorite, I'd say, would be baseball. But Gary, we talked about it last week, Chris, with Gary, Alabama contract extension. I think they got a damn good baseball coach. Won 40 games for the first time since 2002. Sewell Thomas Stadium. One of my fraternity brothers, Matt Rayburn Construction, did that retro refit on there. Damn, they did a great job. And it's conveniently located, Gary. How big can college baseball be, not just at Alabama, but in the SEC and nationally? Because I think we're really building it brick by brick in the right way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt. You mentioned over 3 million viewers, some of the games for the World Series. And I think that for me, having been here, over 20 years, in Alabama specifically, I remember back to when Jim Wells was here and had it rolling. And this was really before college baseball took off the way that it is now. I mean, and I remember when LSU won it in 96 and then Alabama lost LSU the championship game in 97.
Yeah.
And, Wells had a couple of other teams that were close. And then even in the 2000s, when they didn't make it back to Omaha, but they were, in super regionals and, I mean, had some great teams. I remember 2006 hosting the Super here, and North Carolina came in with those two great pitchers and upset Alabama. I thought Alabama had a team that year that could have won it all. And there wasn't nearly the attention paid to college baseball that there is now. Of course, the internet hadn't blown up the way it did. But I remember when Alabama was right there, with LSU, and had they won a national championship or two, things might have been different. But a couple things happened, and I'm talking Alabama specifically. They kind of, was why Alabama's behind a lot of other teams in the SEC. When Jim Wells had it rolling, and I knew him really well, and I'd make motivational videos for him to show the team, when we were on tape still. And but he told me then that Alabama needed to either redo the facility or build a new facility. That's where this was all headed. And I can remember them bringing in temporary bleachers for regionals and such because they just didn't have enough seats. And that's how big it was. I mean, the place was packed and jumping. And but Coach Moore at the time, as the AD, I think felt like, well, we're winning. They were trying to invest in some other sports as far as facilities. And, they did a little touch up to it, but really did not do the kind of upgrades that other schools were doing with their stadiums. So they got behind in the ballpark situation. And then Coach Wells, as good as they were, they just kind of level off. And I think he felt like they didn't make the commitment that they needed to make to take it to the next level. And the next thing you know, all these schools in the SEC are, and the facilities are unbelievable. And even now, and you're right, Rob, Sewell Thomas is beautiful. It is centrally located. That's another thing. There were some people who were talking about maybe building a new facility down by the river or something like that. But Coach Moore wanted, he felt like it fit beautifully there next to Coleman Coliseum, next to the football complex and all those type of things. So facility-wise, it's good. It's not the best in the SEC, and in Alabama right now, from a home field advantage, is good. If you guys have been here, you know what I'm talking about. But it's not LSU, it's not Arkansas, it's not Tennessee. So they're still, I think, trying to get the fan involvement level as high as those other facilities, because I think it's tougher for Alabama when they go on the road still than it is for teams that come into Tuscaloosa. Now, Rob Vaughn, I'm with you. I think he's doing a terrific job. A little bit of disappointment. I thought that, Alabama's resume was good enough to host, but everybody in the SEC can't host. I get it. Yeah. And, they lost those last two series at Vanderbilt and at Florida, both series they could have won. And then they lost to head up to Tennessee in the SEC tournament. But I thought, short of hosting, I thought that regional in Hattiesburg was gettable. And, I've gotten some pushback from this because I said I think Alabama's the best team in the regional before the regional. And I said after the regional, I still think they were the best team. As we know, you guys were talking about, it's baseball. Best team doesn't always win. I'm disappointed that they didn't get out of that regional. I thought that they and there's some things that I'm still trying to figure out. Zane Adams, who basically is your number one starter for most of the season, didn't really pitch after the regular season. He came in for, one inning against Tennessee in relief, and then didn't pitch in the or pitch in the regional. And then you've got Riley Quick, who they held, they rested for 2 weeks. And I don't know if it was rust or what, but Miami got to him in the first inning for 3 runs. And after that, he settled in. But now you've got to transfer the success that you're having as a program to the postseason. I mean, Coach Vaughn said himself, we won 40-plus games for the first time since 2002, but you're going to be remembered for what you do in the postseason. And that's 2 years in a row they've gone 0-2 in regionals. So there's still some work to be done. I like the trajectory of the program. I love Coach Vaughn. He's still only 38 years old. He's a young guy with a lot of experience as a head coach. But there to go from good to great, which is what you have to be in the SEC. I think if you're going to make those runs to Omaha, they haven't been in 26 years. There's still work to be done. They're still behind some other programs in this conference, in my opinion.
Yeah. Chris, response to that, that's a great take from sports director who's there on the ground every day, knows that program inside out.
Yeah. I don't know if Rob Browne is an elite coach, but I think he might be. I think he's tremendous. And I thought, like, when A&M made a decision not to get rid of Michael Early, Rob Browne's name I was hearing that privately connected to that job. I don't know how valid that was or not, but I'm like, man, that would be a tremendous hire if you're A&M. And Gary probably knows this. Rob wanted to play for A&M, dreamed to play for A&M, and they wouldn't give him much of a sniff. And I just think, and we talked with Rob for about an hour before the season, did a show with him. He's likable. He's sharp. He's got kind of a brand where he goes and gets these JUCO grinders, Richie Bonamalo guys, and it worked for them, right? That they developed Cade Snell into a big-time player. Gary, I thought Alabama, I was with you, they should have hosted. If there's any other conference besides Alabama's name, I think they're one of the 16. Yeah. And if Southern Miss's AD's not on the committee, that too. But they didn't. And I thought the regional was gettable. I had them coming out of it. They lost, two? I don't know if they were 2 one-run games, but I know the first one, Cade Snell misses a homer by a couple of feet. If
I still don't know how it didn't go out.
Yeah, I mean, and like that's baseball, right? Like a little gust of wind, you don't do anything different. The ball's out. You're in the winner's bracket. They lose a 1-run game, I think, to Southern Miss from memory. I thought they were a really good team, better than people realize. I think they suffered a little bit from being Alabama. They're not really a brand on par with a lot of the rest of the league, which is unfortunate. But I think the job he's doing there, I think if I'm Alabama, I'm doing everything I can within reason to keep him because I think he's an outstanding coach.
Yeah. And to win 40 games in his first year, and that, God, the SEC now with Texas and Oklahoma coming in, yeah, it's just more of a grind. But the first year with both of those teams in there, Gary, to get 13 in speaks volumes, loud and clear. The SEC, even with increased numbers, is still it's the best ever in terms of the number of teams invited to the tournament.
Yeah, and following up on Chris with Coach Vaughn, I think there's a couple things too with this extension, and I agree. I mean, A&M I think kind of has always been his dream school, and the ties to that university are strong. But now with him signing the extension, I don't think it's just a commitment from Greg Byrne to Rob Vaughn. I think it's a commitment from Rob Vaughn to Alabama. One thing I know. He and his family are very happy here. And you got, again, this is not a 60-year-old coach. This is a 38-year-old coach who has children. And they are thrilled living here. You know, the youth baseball and all the things that they're involved in. I know some of his neighbors too. And, you know, he's a big part of the community. So I think that, now, again, that doesn't mean that somewhere down the line, you know, with some of the, if he does well here with some of the money that, these schools are paying out, that he won't leave Alabama. But right now, you know, they've got him up to 7 figures with the extension. And I think he's in a good place with where he's at in his career and with his family. So I think this is a good marriage for now. As I said, the key now for Rob Vaughn is to take it from good to elite. And that's going to be the challenge. And another thing about this Alabama team and Jason Jackson, we know what an incredible job he did after the Bohannon thing went down. And, you know, they've been together 2 years. I think you got to develop more depth in your pitching staff. I mean, there's just, you know, I thought they were a starter short on the weekend. And during the course of the season, I mean, it kind of became a 6 or 7 pitcher staff. And, you know, we're a lot of guys, and I don't know, you know, they've gone to the portal, and I don't know if they're any good or not because they never really threw. Yeah. So I think they're looking to add depth in the pitching staff. I do think lineup-wise, they were solid. As Chris alluded to, he's done a great job of bringing guys in. I thought, you know, I still think there's some things, and Coach Vaughn said this on my show, that he didn't do necessarily a good job. You can't wait to the season to do it. He's got to do a better job in the offseason with some of the small ball things, you know, bunting, you know, hitting behind guys, you know, generating offense sometimes when you're not swinging the bats well. That's something that they're going to work on. But I'll be interested to see in 2026. I mean, again, it's 1999 is the last time they went to the College World Series, and that's a long time. You know, it's over a quarter century. So I'm going to see, you know, if they can get there.
Well, certainly there's no apathy, you know, in that commitment. When Alabama decides they want to be great in something, they're pretty damn good at it. So, I think, Chris, you made a very telling comment a minute ago that you love Arkansas's pitching 1 through 10. You think LSU's 1 through 4 arms are better than Arkansas, but you got to tap into the bullpen. And was I hearing correctly? I have very good hearing that Duke had like 13 left-handed pitchers on their team, because, you know, Georgia was struggling against them, against left-handed pitching. And I just heard that comment. There's no way that's true, but does anybody have 13 pitchers on their roster?
Yeah, I mean, Georgia's a team that used just a ton of pitchers. I mean, they pitched like 18 or 20 guys this year. I'm looking up the Duke thing. I've got it here somewhere.
13 left-handed pitchers?
Yeah, and I want to verify that. Trust but verify.
That would have to be a
Mr.
record.
Gorbachev.
Well, let me see. I've got a thing that I pull from the NCAA site on all teams.
I'm interested to know now if they had 13 lefties. Lord.
Yeah, and I heard it on ESPN from a comment.
They have.
But again, he could have been wrong. And
what I have has 11, although I'm not sure the 11.
That's still a lot of left-handed pitching
on the regional roster.
So my dad said when he was a kid, he was left-handed, and the teacher said, Bobby, you can't be left. They made him become right-handed.
Well, they used to. That's what old days. That's what they would do. I mean, they would make the kids, if you started playing guitar on left side or you look like they'd turn you into a righty, man.
I still be out duck hunting. Somebody will hand me the shotgun and I'll try it left-handed. It's awkward.
Well, that's why with golf, because there were so few left-handed golf clubs. That's why most left-handed players play right-handed.
Yeah.
Now you had Bob Charles. Of course, now you got more lefties, but the 11 left-handed pitchers is unbelievable.
It is.
Let me say this real quick. What time is it, Rob? Because I don't have.
It is 8:47 in the AM.
Yeah, I got several more minutes. But Arkansas was my pre-regional pick to win it all. I think it's Dave Van Horn's time. I heard you guys talking about it. The way it is, I hate that LSU and Arkansas are playing right off the bat.
I do too.
The only two SEC teams out there. But I'm interested in Chris's thoughts on. Don't get me wrong. The SEC is by far the best baseball conference. We know that, the deepest. The way it played out in the regionals is a little disappointing. I mean, there's no other way around it. And, Rob, I think I told you this. When you say it's going to, it just means more and you're going to beat your chest and you're going to crow about how good you are, then you got to be willing to eat a little crow. And I do think the SEC had to eat a little crow based on what happened in these regionals, Chris.
Yeah, I'll say this is tongue in cheek. The SEC can still thump its chest a little bit and say we got twice as many teams in Omaha as the next best conference. Yeah. And so because I agree with you, because it was disappointing not to see a Vanderbilt or a Texas or even the way Florida face planted in Conway was just unbelievable. But I don't know, maybe there's a lesson in here that you've got 6 different conferences and an independent that was hung out to dry, albeit a power in Oregon State with no conference. And I don't know. I wonder, the easy answer could be it's just baseball, right? The weird stuff happens, and maybe we just had a lot of that this year. But I do wonder, too, we're in an era where, I'm not going to name names, although Gary, you may know who I'm talking about when I tell the story. Hearing a guy at the SEC tournament a couple of years ago whose dad was shopping him, before the portal even opened up, at the tournament, wound up at another SEC school. And then you've got guys that are hitting the portal that people I talk to don't think are going to go to the school that they're transferring to because it's a leverage play for the draft. You got all kinds of little games going on here. With that, you got distracted coaches in Omaha like we had last year where Schlossnagel's about to leave for his alma mater and, getting his players to go with them. We've got craziness. And I wonder if just the whole thing, let's look at Murray State for a minute. Those guys, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2, are not pro prospects. The coach makes $60-something thousand a year. He cuts his own grass at the park.
Maybe.
Just when we remove the money and the distractions and the stuff from it and just go back to just playing baseball, which, these guys are having the time of their life at Murray State. I wonder if there's a kernel of something in there that some teams tapped into, in the NCAA tournament where maybe you got higher profile teams where kids are distracted by this and that. I don't know if that's just something we make up to explain something we can't explain, if there's something to it. But to me, the way it all played out was just really fascinating.
I'm with you. And I know exactly who you were talking about a couple of years ago.
Yep.
The SEC tournament hit close to home. But, one thing about Murray State, too, and I'm with you, and even Coastal, even though they've won a national championship, still, it's Coastal Carolina to go into Auburn and win that super regional in 2 games. But for Murray in particular, there's something romantic about it because you're right. It goes to show you, regardless of the resources, when they start the games, it's 0-0. And I think these coaches, remind their players, listen, we got as much right to win as anybody else. We're here, and you can't just rubber stamp a team into the Super or into the World Series. They got to earn it. And this Murray State story, of course, the football coach there is a friend of mine, Jody Wright. Rob, who you probably
Ellis
know.
Johnson's son's a GA for him.
Yeah, and it's amazing what this is doing for that school. The visibility. Yeah. But Chris is right, man. To think that there are still coaches that cut their own grass, make that kind of money where they're having to budget every month, and they're in the College World Series. It is unbelievable. And based on what I saw of their hitters, they could win a game. It's not like I don't think they're going to win the World Series, but it's good for baseball, and it keeps that romantic notion alive. And like you said, to speak to all the distractions and with what these major programs are doing with the draft and the tampering, here in Tuscaloosa, and, there was a report that came out last week that Justin LeBron is going to stay. And I told you, Rob, I think it makes sense for him to stay. I think he's going to be a high enough draft pick last year. You're in a good situation at Alabama. You're a star. You're established. Wait a year. But there's no doubt he could go in the portal and make a lot more money than what Alabama's going to be able to pay him. But hopefully he'll stay, and that's what it's looking like.
Can you imagine the financial impact and just visibility? When Robert Griffin won the Heisman Trophy at Baylor, they estimated that brought in fundraising, branding over $250 million. On a smaller scale, Murray State. And I love hearing that story about the coach. And this is like, you talked to John Brady so much during basketball season. I said, Coach, what'd you start out making as a coach? And he goes, I'm almost embarrassed to say, he goes, I made $15,000 a year my first 3 seasons as a coach. And he said this on the show. And, I know people that make tremendous amounts of money now, but they were in a business back in the mid 70s. Stock market was so bad. This guy is a nationally known guy. And he said, I used to cash my checks at the liquor store. I was embarrassed to go to my own bank. But you know what? He hung in there and he fought through it. And Gary just nailed it. Chris, there is something about baseball. James Earl Jones, that voice, build it and they will come. And by the way, I'm in Gibson's Donuts every couple of times a week from my parents. They're addicted to the donuts. I look on the wall, there's an autographed original Stan Musial jersey in a glass frame. And I'm going, and it was remarked to the guy, I'm like, what would that thing be worth? The Gas House Gang, I don't know. Baseball on radio is the best sport there is. I don't think there's anything close.
Every year, one of my favorite moments, and I don't get to go as much as I used to. I've been the last 2 or 3 years, with school-age kids, and my wife works, but I get to go for a couple days. But every time when I walk into Hoover, that first time where you go through the media gate, you walk in, and before I even go to my seats in the press box, I'll go peek in the concourse. And just that first moment where you see green grass and blue skies and the trees in the background and, just baseball in front of you is like one of those, it's almost like a field of dreams moment where it just takes your breath away for a second. And just the spectacle of it and the first little bit of it I get every year I go to Hoover is just one of my favorite moments of the year. There's something like it. And I don't know if it's just because that's my first sporting event that my dad took me to when I was a kid. It was a Nashville Sounds game. And maybe it's got an emotional attachment there that's got a lot to do with it. But there's just something about it. I grew up watching the Braves and the Cubs on cable TV. I'd come from school. Yeah. First thing I'd do is turn on the Cubs.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even a Cubs fan, but you couldn't not watch them. And yeah, it has a hold on you if you love the game that's just hard to explain.
It does. And Gary, I know you've about got to go because you got a great show that comes on 9 to 11. I listen to it. I love it. And let people know how they can follow you. But closing comments. And we didn't even get into football.
But I'm
hey, it's June 12th.
Yeah, now that I'm in my 60s, doing this as long as I've done it, it's easy to kind of lose some of that excitement, some of that boyhood enthusiasm. But it takes, what Chris said, takes me back to when we moved out Northeast Alabama when I was in the 4th grade and had the antenna, and I'd be twisting the antenna around trying to pick up the OWTCG before TBS to pick up Braves games, Channel 17. And getting the antenna right there and then listening to games on the radio and keeping the scorebook myself. You know what I mean? Listening to Ernie Johnson and Pete Van Weeren and Skip Carey. And that kind of takes you back. That there's something different about baseball, the pace of the game. But anyway, and there's not a better marriage in college sports for a postseason tournament to me than Hoover in the SEC baseball.
Yes. Don't ever move it.
So, but anyway, people can find me at on X at Gary Harris _WVUA. My WVUA 23 Facebook page has really taken off. Look for me there. The radio station website is tide109.com. The TV station website is WVUA23.com. As you mentioned, Tiger Insider TV, Tuesday nights at 6:30. And I've got Amanda Kristoff on this morning on my show. She's the sports business reporter that broke that story yesterday about the 8 female athletes.
Yes, saw
it's
that.
not a lawsuit, but an appealing that the $2.8 billion back money to the athletes. So the lawsuits have already started coming in here in regards to the House settlement. So I'm going to have her on to explain that. Hey, thanks, guys. Enjoy it.
Great stuff as always. What a pleasure, man. Thank you, Gary. Chris, I saw that story on Twitter yesterday about those lawsuits with Title IX. It's like, they're coming. I got 2 boys. I got 2 girls. That's what that Title IX's for. But we also know that football brings the big money in. And you think about what it means to have a great football program.
Yeah.
But it will be interesting to see how those cases play out.
Yeah. So, well, go ahead. Let me let you finish.
Go ahead. I'm trying to fix my light.
Well, you got conflicting things. Like, it's called revenue share, right? And if it's based on revenues, football's king, men's basketball second, everything else from there stand in line. You might have some regional interest in stuff like Nebraska women's volleyball or Auburn gymnastics or whatever, but the rest of it, and maybe women's but it all pales in comparison. So but on the other hand, you got Title IX, which is based on gender equality and all that stuff, and federal funding involved. So you got you've got oil and water here.
Yeah,
and I don't know how you deal with it. I thought it was just laughable. You saw a few schools, Vanderbilt in particular. The athletic director tweets out stuff like, basically, this is fixed and this is how it is. I'm like, are you crazy? This is not fixed. It's just the start of it. And here's the thought I had, and maybe it connects somewhere. Like, I keep thinking, and I'll give you an example for baseball. Paul Skeens allegedly got paid about $250,000 from LSU.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago. Justin LeBron, I don't know what he got. And it's Alabama. It's not LSU. He was asking for $1.5 million from what I was told. I don't know what he ended up getting at Alabama, but think about that. That's just within a few years.
Yeah.
And, sixfold inflation. And I don't, Skeens wasn't Skeens yet. And so throw that in there for part of the facts of the discussion. But here's my point. It feels like prices for players have just gone up and up and up and up and up.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much the NCAA and the schools, how many tens, hundreds of millions of dollars it could have saved had everybody just figure out some way to get to the table, come to an agreement that didn't leave it open for all these additional lawsuits. The prices have gone up. There's more lawsuits. Like, I don't know why. Somebody should have gotten smart about this 4 years ago and made a settlement, but we've unleashed chaos and there's only more to come.
You're right. And basically we've gone around in circles and come back to where we started. And so now the bag man is back. Who was it? Had that song, The Boys Are Back in Town. It is. But he never left, to be completely honest and transparent. So that being said, we're going to work it out. We're 78 days away from the start of college football season. At least one SEC school, Auburn, will be playing at Baylor, which, by the way, that is not going to be, if you think that's going to be an easy game, the Big 12 plays some pretty darn good football. And Chris, we got a few more minutes before we go, and I appreciate you being on with us today. Had a little technical issues, and Brendan is unbelievable making this happen. I have complete confidence. Going fishing with Brendan would be like going after Moby Dick. You'd stop by Costco to get extra tartar sauce because you're going to catch the fish. So I never worry. But I love the work that you're doing, and you got a couple of characters, man, on your podcast talking baseball that y'all know what you're talking about. But you cover football, you cover basketball and all. The magazines are out, and I've got them in my hands here. I got them at Barnes & Noble, Athlines, and Lindy's. So, I'm sure some of those. There we go. I'm sure some of those people. Nashville had Athlines for the longest time. I think they're still a lot of stuff is moving to Nashville.
Yeah.
And someone said there's changes, but a trend that I'm seeing is the big schools, a lot of them, they're keeping who they want. You're going to lose players not just because of the portal. Some guys are just going to transfer. They don't like their position coach to the point where they can't be in the same room with them or whatever. But are you really shocked at Lindy's top 10? Texas, Penn State, Ohio State, Clemson, LSU, Notre Dame, Oregon, Alabama, Georgia, Miami. Now, Florida is a team I'm keeping my eyes on. I listened to Shane Matthews talking on the Buddy Martin show Monday, and it's wild because he's a very smart guy with football. And his three teams he thinks are undervalued, and that's my three: Florida, Oklahoma, and Auburn. Cole Kubelik Monday night talked about it. Touchdown Club meeting in Memphis, summer speaker series. That Oklahoma defensive line, watch out. Brent Venables is going to be focusing on the defense. And then you look outside of the SEC, Clemson, loaded on the offensive line. But the more things change, the more they stay the same. Every one of these are big national brands. And Clemson being picked by some people to win the whole thing, and they're pretty much doing it the old way.
Yeah. It's funny you said the more things change, the more they stay the same. That's exactly what I was about to say. When you look at the top 10 that Lindy's has got, there's one big difference, and I think this is the key thing that we're seeing in college sports. Alabama and Georgia not long ago, and maybe LSU would have been 1-2 on that list. They would have been at or near the top instead of near the bottom of that top 10. That's the one thing that's changed. A lot of the power players are still the same ones. The difference is, like within that top 10, you got an elite Alabama or Georgia team, which is the majority of Nick Saban's time in Alabama.
Yeah.
And the majority of Kirby Smart's last half dozen years. And it's the question becomes at some point in the season, it's can anybody stay within 2 touchdowns of Alabama or Georgia, whoever's the dominant power. And Florida, when Urban Meyer was at for a while. The difference is now the parity 1 to 10, I don't think the tiers are there like they used to be, where just the top of the top are way above the rest.
Yeah.
Now it's like what you saw in college football last year. And again, the seeding was screwy, but Ohio State was the 8th seed and won the national title. And you had no idea what was coming week to week, except when you played the teams that got the conference buys. And even some of those teams were tougher than we thought. So I think the brands still stay at the top, but the ability for one of those brands to dominate seems to me like the playing field has been leveled, especially in football, if not in all the other sports too.
Yeah, and remember the narrative when it came to Ohio State last year going into the playoffs was Ryan Day is an idiot. He's lost 4 straight to Michigan, and it was all about he's got to go. And look what they did. They win the whole thing against Notre Dame. And I think, and I'm seeing this in college football. Tony Barnhart was on with us yesterday talking about it. It's the adults that are screwing things up. I mean, don't blame the kids. I say the kids, the student athletes. You look, who would not take the money that they're throwing at you? Now, it's not everybody getting all this money, but you can also, those that created this can also fix it. But I do think that the interest in college football, it's huge. Look at season ticket sales and look wherever you pick the school. I feel good about that. Also think that players, here's how this will correct itself, in my opinion. As more players realize, man, I transferred 3 or 4 or 5 times, and they get out and they don't have a home to go to. I mean, it's like people that have been married 4 or 5 times, and you got stuff scattered everywhere. Your past, you really don't have a place to call home. And you pick the player, okay? Pick the player. But they stayed 4 or 5 years you pick the school. And most every penny they make in their lives is because they did that. Whether they were a starter or not. Chris Lee of Southeastern 16. I mean, that's true NIL, not this quick flash in the pan Band-Aid right now. It's there now. I'm curious of the guys that have been getting this big money, where is it going to be in 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, there's like a whole separate conversation about higher ed. I've got a couple degrees. I worked in it for a while,
Yeah.
but things have changed so quickly. And I know this isn't exactly where you're going, but I think it's part of the discussion. Like, how much is an education worth anymore? You've got to have it, but like when we were in school, your value in school was the library because
Yes.
it gave you access to information that you couldn't get otherwise. When
Yep.
colleges started in America 150, 200 years ago, pick your number, like it was to give you an education because there was a value in that. And it was stuff you couldn't get anywhere else. Now you just Google search and use YouTube, and you got to obviously pay attention to your source and make sure it's not fraudulent.
Yeah.
But like other than being a doctor or something like that, or an engineer where like you probably do need extra depth that you can't just look up on your own. And then you got life's experiences too, can teach you. Like in business, you can learn as much. I've learned as much or more running my own business as I have getting a business degree and an MBA.
Yeah.
But my point is the value of education has changed because technology has changed it. And so now the degrees don't seem to be worth much to anybody. They're transferring, they're losing credits all the time. There's a fundamental value proposition that higher ed's going to have to fix underneath all that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Chris, tell them how they can follow you and I'll let you go. But great stuff. And, you can make a living with your hands. You can make millions with your mind. So you get your education, be it in college or just day to day. But it's truer than I've ever seen it.
Yeah. That's my entity, as you see it, Southeastern 16. Most of our stuff's on YouTube. Just about any podcast platform you want to find, we're there too. We try to cover the SEC in depth with intelligence and not just hot takes. And we cover baseball, football, basketball year round. Hope people like it. Try us out if you haven't.
Hey, I listen to you back and forth to Memphis all the time. Love it.
Thank
Chris,
you.
Take care. We'll do it again next week.
You bet. Thanks.
All right. You bet. Let me say something about Winter Timber Outdoors, folks. All over this SEC footprint, that's their goal to get there, opening up a 13,000 square foot store in Auburn in early August. All your hunting and fishing needs for the outdoor life, they got it. All the Yeti. I mean, Yeti basically has everything: clothing, coolers, tumblers. They've got all that covered. It's time to get ready for deer season is now, okay? You don't show up a week before the season and get your food plots ready. Get to work. Call Winter Timber Outdoors in Athens, Alabama. Let them know they're open every day. Love having them as a sponsor, okay? Also, LandersFordMemphis.com. Take $500 off for SEC Sidelines audience members. The number one Ford dealership in the Mid-South. And that is not by accident. They've been doing this a long time. The owner, Kent Ritchie, Don Kitchens, the president, Brad Bellamy, the general manager. They're three of the nicest people you're going to meet. They're great to work with. They're open every day of the week, Poplar and Houston Levy, where Memphis meets Collierville, 7 a.m., 7 p.m. And the service department provides round-trip transportation. You've got the Ford Power Promise employee pricing. The 25 Ford Expeditions are there, the F-150 lines, the F-250s. And, man, those Broncos. I love the Sasquatch off-road package. They got it all. And they're right down the street from Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee, where Saturday night at 6 p.m., right when they close, live in the boot room, it's a great, great deal. You've got the Park Hillbillies playing. Call out there and see if they got any extra tickets left or hit the scalpers out front. It's going to be a great night. They've got unbelievable clothing, boots, Barber, Wilson, Old South, STS, Pendleton, Schaefer, Duckheads, men's and women's clothing, kids' clothing. They got it all. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m., 6 p.m. Charles Hall, his wife, Laura, the owners, they are the best people. J.M. Huffman, the whole crew. Hey, look, we got John Talty, senior college football writer for CBS, will be joining us tomorrow morning with Doug and Frank and Brendan and me on the college roundtable, and Brad Bellamy will check in later. And let me say this. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Count your blessings, people, and thank the people around you that make your life better, and do what you can to help people in return. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.